The night the lights went out in a small town in West Virginia, no news helicopter hovered overhead. No anchor with perfect hair stood before a camera saying, "Breaking news." There was only darkness, the sound of wind scraping across abandoned porches, and a man named Thomas Keller sitting in his truck staring at a factory that had been dead for 10 years but still smelled of rust and lost promises. In that moment, America looked nothing like the country shown on television. And this story, like many others, was never meant to be told. America, as it appears on screens, is loud, confident, and constantly moving forward. But inside America, beyond the studio lights and trending headlines, there exists another country, quiet, fractured, resilient, and often invisible. This is a journey through that hidden America, a story told not in clips and slogans, but in lives, memories, and consequences. Thomas Keller once believed in the American dream with a faith so deep it felt religious. His father had worked at the same steel plant before him, and his grandfather before that. 3 generations forged metal, paid taxes, coached Little League, and believed that if you worked hard and stayed loyal, America would take care of you. When the factory shut down, it wasn't just a building that closed, it was a covenant that broke. The official explanation came in a letter: global competition, cost efficiency, strategic restructuring. Words that meant nothing when Thomas stood in line at the unemployment office, surrounded by men who looked just like him: calloused hands, bent shoulders, eyes dulled by shock. Television never lingered on these lines. It preferred charts, not faces. West Virginia wasn't alone. Across the Midwest, entire towns hollowed out quietly. Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, places once called the backbone of America, slowly became footnotes. On TV, America was Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and Hollywood. Inside America, it was pawn shops replacing grocery stores, churches doubling as food banks, and schools teaching children whose parents were working 2 jobs but still losing ground. In Flint, Michigan, Maria Gonzalez boiled water every night before making dinner. She learned to do it without thinking, like breathing. Her children thought it was normal. What television showed was a scandal, a few weeks of outrage, a few politicians shaking hands, a few panels arguing about responsibility. What it didn't show was Maria's quiet terror every time her youngest complained of stomach pain, or the way she memorized the color of rust in the sink like a warning sign from God. Maria came to America believing in safety. She worked as a nurse's aide, paid her taxes, voted when she could, and trusted that the system, flawed but functional, would protect her children. But when the water turned poisonous, something else became toxic too: trust. That loss doesn't show up in statistics, but it reshapes generations. Inside America, trust is a fragile currency. Travel south, and the landscape changes, but the silence remains. In rural Mississippi, a town called Belzone sits surrounded by fields that once made it the catfish capital of the world. The title still appears on faded signs, but the factories are gone, and so are most of the jobs. What remains is memory. Evelyn Carter, 72 years old, remembers when Belzone had 3 movie theaters and a hospital that stayed open all night. Now, the nearest emergency room is over 40 miles away. When her husband had a stroke, the ambulance took too long. He died before reaching the highway. On television, America debates healthcare in soundbites. Inside America, healthcare is a distance measured in miles and minutes, in heartbeats and sirens that arrive too late. Evelyn doesn't watch the news anymore. She says it feels like listening to people argue about a house they've never lived in. The story shifts again in the desert of Arizona, where the border is not a line on a map, but a wound that never heals. At night, volunteers leave water jugs in the sand, hoping to save someone they'll never meet. Some call them heroes, others call them criminals. Miguel Alvarez crossed the border at 17. He didn't come chasing wealth, he came running from death. In his hometown, refusing to join a gang was a death sentence. America was survival. He picked lettuce under the sun, slept 6 men to a room, and sent money home. He paid taxes with a number that wasn't supposed to exist. He learned English from radio shows and believed that one day, if he kept his head down, he would belong. Television shows immigration as invasion or abstraction numbers moving across screens. Inside America, it is Miguel standing in a field at dawn, fingers bleeding, whispering a prayer in Spanish that his children might grow up speaking English without fear. He was deported after a traffic stop. Inside America, families disappear without headlines. In Los Angeles, beneath the glow of billboards and the promise of fame, thousands sleep in tents. Homelessness is shown on TV as a problem, a statistic, a political weapon, but inside America, it is personal. Sarah Whitman was a graphic designer with a steady job until medical bills swallowed her savings. One surgery, one recovery that took too long, one layoff during restructuring, and suddenly she was sleeping in her car. She showered at the gym, charged her phone at coffee shops, and edited resumes under streetlights. She avoided her friends because shame is heavier than hunger. Television shows homelessness as failure. Inside America, it is often math numbers that stop adding up. In New York City, in an apartment no bigger than a parking space, an undocumented woman named Leanne sewed dresses for 14 hours a day. The clothes sold for hundreds of dollars in stores she would never enter. Her hands were permanently scarred from needles. When the building caught fire, she escaped through a window. Others didn't. The story made the news for a day. Inside America, exploitation wears many uniforms. Now shift to the heart of power. Washington, D.C. on television. It is a stage of debates, scandals, and speeches. Inside America, it is a place where policies are written that will decide whether Thomas finds work again, whether Maria trusts her tap water, whether Miguel sees his children grow up. Lobbyists walk marble halls with quiet confidence, carrying briefcases heavier than ballots. Their influence doesn't trend on social media, but it shapes laws with surgical precision. Inside America, democracy is real but uneven. Yet this is not a story only of loss. In the same towns abandoned by industry, people rebuild in ways cameras don't follow. In Detroit, empty lots become urban farms. Neighbors grow food where factories once stood. Children learn that soil can heal what steel destroyed. In Appalachia, former miners train to install solar panels on the same hills where coal once poisoned streams. The transition is slow, painful, imperfect, but it is happening quietly. In New Orleans, teachers buy supplies with their own money and teach children whose parents work 2 jobs and still come home exhausted. They teach because they believe education is rebellion against despair. Television prefers heroes with capes. Inside America, heroism wears ordinary clothes. After the pandemic, millions reassessed what work meant. Essential workers, nurses, grocery clerks, delivery drivers were called heroes, then forgotten. Inside America, their wages barely changed, but their awareness did. People began asking questions that television didn't have time for. Why does working full-time still mean poverty? Why does sickness equal debt? Why does zip code determine destiny? In Montana, a Native American reservation fights quietly for clean water and basic infrastructure. Treaties signed centuries ago are still broken promises. On TV, Native communities appear in history segments or holiday commercials. Inside America, they exist in the present, fighting for survival with dignity. In Silicon Valley, billionaires speak of changing the world while janitors sleep in cars outside the campuses they clean. Innovation moves fast. Justice does not. Inside America, inequality is not accidentally, it is designed, maintained, and normalized. And yet, people still believe. They believe because belief is sometimes all that's left. Thomas Keller eventually found work repairing wind turbines. It paid less, but it gave him purpose. He says the turbines remind him that even broken places can generate power. Maria's children grew up. One became a science student because he wanted to understand how water could turn deadly. He doesn't trust systems easily, but he wants to fix them. Miguel's daughter learned English without an accent. She writes essays about borders as ideas, not lines. She dreams of becoming a lawyer. Sarah Whitman got housing through a non-profit and now designs flyers for organizations helping people like her. She says homelessness taught her how thin the line really is. These stories don't fit neatly into segments. They don't scream. They don't trend. They require time, patience, and empathy resources. Modern media rarely spends. Inside America, contradictions coexist, freedom and fear, wealth and want, hope and heartbreak. This is not the America of commercials or campaign ads. This is the America that wakes up before dawn, that works through pain, that loves fiercely even when betrayed by systems meant to protect it. It is an America that doesn't ask to be glorified, only seen. And maybe that is why these stories are not shown on TV, because once you see them, you can't unsee them. Once you listen, silence becomes complicity. Inside America, the real story is still being written by people who don't have microphones, but whose lives are the truth behind the screen. And the most surprising part, despite everything, they're still here, still trying, still believing that America can be more than what it shows. That belief, fragile and stubborn, might be the most powerful story of all.